This is Caribbean Vibe.
And every Caribbean leader taking life at one another. Everyone trying to protect his dollar. Especially since Guyana ends up no foreign exchange, sir. And the Jamaica devalue $3. Well, countries who are more wealthy, man, they laughing out kiki, and making fun at Guyanese and Jamaican man. See in the Caribbean, unless there is cooperation, all of them on the same road to destruction. This time the Barbadians them understand. You can sit back and laugh at Jamaicans, cause without them tourist boats from Regan, sweet Barbados heading for starvation. The day you will get bail from Washington. Well, smoke your pipe, Mr. St. John. This time that you and Eugene, your child, understand that all you have is just sea water and sand. All of them Caribbean leaders, instead of pulling together, they prefer to friend with Reagan and Thatcher. Dominica suffering bad, their goods can get to Trinidad, cause Chambers ain't giving license, it is sad. Chambers saying it's big racket, they want to flood Trinidad market with all their cheap inferior goods and won't. But what do we register as the national carrier? No way, sir. Antigua turned down his offer. This time Chambers and Fairburn understand. You both need each other in the region. You can make treaties with France and Japan. And with your own people you can join hands. Mr. Burden tourists that come St. John, they need beauty for their transportation. This time you and Chambers sit down and start to plan, but all you have is just sea water and sand.
All right, let me say a special greetings, a special welcome to all of you locked into that space at this time. Welcome to Civic Vibes. That is a program, a social media program that is aired each and every Sunday from 6 o'clock. And so it is just about 5 minutes past that 6 o'clock hour. And yes, we are ready to go. Thank you, all those of you who are here already with us. We always really and truly appreciate your listening and being so very attentive to this program that is aired right here on Civic Vibes. This afternoon, folks, it is the 14th of April, 2024, and that is where, again, we want to see a special good evening, Alvin Thomas and myself, and our special invited guest, who is no stranger to us by now. You'll hear from him in just a while out of Antigua and Barbuda. Alvin called it the Wadadli country, so we'll be hearing much more from this brother in just a bit. But just before I move across to Alvin, though, to give his opening remarks to you guys out there, and let me just say a special good afternoon to the Dupe family at this time. Some special condolences messages to them. We continue to sympathize with them, as today was the laying to rest of Brother Elias Dupe Jr., a very, very industrious brother, hardworking brother, and he passed on Easter Monday, I believe, in the T2 Gorge area, and so he's no more, but may his spirit for sure lingers on. That brother, I can tell you, was a very kind brother. So his family, his friends, his loved ones, all those who, you know, in one way, shape, or form was touched by this brother being here with us in the flesh, we want to say to you guys, we empathize with you at this time from the Civic Vibes end. Also, as well, we had well, I shouldn't say a slight, we had an incident earlier in the Cochrane area where a vehicle was consumed by fire in like about 5-10 minutes based on eyewitness reports. That vehicle was really just engulfed in flames. And so, again, we want to empathize to the owners of that particular SUV in my area, that is the Cochrane area at this time. Those of you who are sick and shorting, we pray for you as well. Those of you who are not well, health-wise, we, you know, empathize with you guys as well. We remember our young ones, our elderlies among us as well, and as well the adults, those of you who make that engine of the country keeps moving. We always welcome you right here on Civic Vibes. So folks, yes, another very interesting program awaits you guys this afternoon. So all we ask now is that you make yourself very, very comfortable, and please share that live information. Share the live as we speak so that others may be able to participate, partake for whatever is prepared here in terms of information, that dialogue, the back and forth. You tell us, we tell you. And so that is how we do it right here on Civic Vibes. As you know, Civic Vibes is not a one-track organization, and so we deal with many issues. Whatever issue it is, those issues that affect our lives in Dominica and the region and all further afield, we touch them in terms of bringing on persons, bringing on the experts, bringing on the professionals. And so this afternoon, we have a profession in our midst in the name of Mr. Verbre III of Antigua and Barbuda, a social activist as well. This brother is always talking on behalf of his people. And so in just a while, we'll be hearing from him, read some local issues in Antigua and Barbuda, and for sure, Alvin Thomas and myself, and you guys out there, those of you who are watching and listening, can contribute and tell brother Bird about what is happening to us in Dominica whilst he tells us what is happening to them in Antigua. Remember, it's just one Caribbean, small space. And so what happens to one directly has the potential to affect all of us indirectly as well. So without much delay, let me move across now to Alvin Thomas, who have been missing for some time. Alvin, you have an excuse? Alvin, you have been missing in action
brother
for some
Lofty.
time. So
thank you, Lofty. Thank you, man.
The floor is yours, Alvin. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be back, man. It's a pleasure to be back. I haven't been MIA for the last 2 weekends, but you know how it is. Sometimes when, you know, duty calls, as they say, you end up having to attend to other stuff. But yeah, last weekend, of course, I was out in New York spending a little vacation time with, you know, family. And as a result, the program on Sunday, I was in transit. Actually, that same Sunday, I was flying back from New York to Atlanta. And the Sunday before that, of course, you know, some other engagement. But I'm back. I'm happy to be back, happy to be part of the conversation. It's always a pleasure to have that exchange with our people. So again, I say a pleasant good afternoon to all the many folks who have already tuned in. I can see the live is living up already. We're again going to have another very interesting engagement and conversation. I know, as of course, some folks are always quick to say, boy, you guys talks up a last pally. Yeah, I understand their frustration and their anxiety. But at the end of the day, we have to continue having those dialogues. And hopefully those dialogues will bring a certain action that out of that we'll be able to take action. Because if an uninformed person is not be able to take proper action. Mm-hmm. So once you're informed and you have the information, then that could lend ourselves, to taking the appropriate action. It's a pleasure to be here again, once again this afternoon. And of course, to the third, very articulate young man, I must say. You guys are the youngest on the panel, you know. I always have to throw that out, you know, Lofty.
Alvin,
I know Via is going to challenge me on that,
you
but
have
that's
to rub it in.
I have to rub it in, man. You have to respect the senior, you know, out there. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a pleasure to have him with us this afternoon. Quite eloquent in his contributions over the past times we've had him. So Look forward. You've already extended, of course, the condolences, and I just want to lend my voice to that, to this young man, Dupi, who so accidentally died on Easter Monday at the T2 Gorge. It's so sad. But you know, I suppose, as they sometimes say, God has a better plan for us. So wish he and his family all the best. And to those who are celebrating today, whatever celebration they have in mind, do enjoy that celebration. So Lofty, let's get the ball rolling as our
Yes,
folks
indeed.
kick back, pull a glass, pull a chair, have a drink of whatever that is, and let's have that conversation going.
Definitely.
Yes, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your opening remarks here. As I always say, Alvin, I always appreciate your effort, your arduous effort in always making time to come here on the program, Alvin, and help spread the word, help educate. So, Alvin, thank you very much indeed. Well, folks, as we mentioned him earlier, Brother Ver C. Bird III, he's here again with us, and so he's no stranger. So I'm not even going to ask his brother to introduce himself as it were to us again. But just say, Brother Bird, good afternoon to you in a very, very special way, and welcome to the Civic Vibes Space on another opportunity.
Good afternoon, Dominica. It's a pleasure to be here again on this program. And you know, one thing I must say about Civic Vibes, you know, I'm actually on Civic Vibes more than on media in Antigua.
Wow.
You understand? That is the truth. I
That's
don't really
for us, yes.
I don't really believe in mainstream media. What you're doing here is cutting edge, state of the art of disseminating information to the Caribbean as a whole. You guys will be responsible for pulling the whole entire Caribbean, West Indians, the British West Indians, the English-speaking West Indian countries together more than what mainstream radio is doing now. Alvin, you're in what, Atlanta?
Yes, I'm in Atlanta, yes.
I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Can you imagine? Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Until tomorrow. I have a flight tomorrow morning. Right?
Yes.
And my buddy there is in Dominica. But we are talking about things that are happening in our region of concern.
Absolutely.
So I am very pleased to be back on the program. For those, I don't want to be, let us not think that everybody knows who I am. The name may be familiar to some. I'm the grandson of Papa Bird. I am a lawyer and I have a degree in government and politics from St. John's University. So I believe I do have the formal education to talk about what we have to discuss here today. And what Alvin mentioned about people, y'all just talking, y'all just keep going on, boy, y'all chat a lot, boy. It is very important in a democratic society to inform the electorate. We are not in a totalitarian state where it is communist or whatever form, fascist or whatever ideology, where the leaders tell you what you're supposed to say and what you're supposed to think and what you're supposed to do. It is a free society, so it is upon us to inform you so that when the time comes for you to exercise your vote, you're not going into that ballot saying, oh, the politician gave me a ham and a turkey 2 days ago, and you know, $1,000 on top of that makes me go and vote for him. You have got to vote not for yourself, but for your country and for your generations to come. And this is what we have to do, is to inform you. It may be a process where you get frustrated. I get frustrated. I want to see change immediately. But this is the process that has to be done on the system of democracy that we have chosen, our forefathers have chosen for us. We have got to inform you with the truth as best as possible so that you know what is happening. And that is my opening.
And that is a very powerful opening indeed.
Yeah, I know you're absolutely right, Veer. And let me just piggyback a little on that.
Mm-hmm.
And just saying what you just said, Constitution, and I'm sure it's similar to the Antigua Constitution, states protection of protection of freedom of expression.
Right.
And you're right, in a democracy, you have to be able to express yourselves. And the day we allow that freedom to be taken away from us, where we no longer can talk on issues, or express how we feel about certain issue or call certain issues out, then we are undermining one of the fundamental principles of our democratic right under the Constitution. So I'm glad you made that point.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
All right, folks, those of you who want to call into the program sometimes later, the numbers to call, I'll plug these numbers in the live feed so that it is there that you can make use of it. They are 245-2396. Again, I repeat, 245-2396 or 615-9470. These are the two designated numbers to get your voice into the conversation here. Also, those of you on YouTube watching the program, thank you very much. We are streaming this program live on Facebook as well, and also on Twitter. So yes, these are the handles that we are operating by for now. Alvin, we have a list there. Let us just try to run through that list as briefly as possible. Dave Bertrand, Everlasting Peter, Briner Francis says, early bird, good evening, sir. John Harry, Annette Monduri, Lucina McDowell Thole listening as well. Rosa Robinson, Mali Ostri, Cara, Alice. We also have here Earl Francis, Brother David Joseph, Eliza, Louis Gomes, Grace Rudette, Ziska Sarah, Peter Carbon, former Minister of Agriculture back in the days. Good evening to you, my bro. Veronica Pascal, Owen Prosper, Janice Bruno, you and your family over there in the Point Michel area. Good evening to you. Janet Damir, Verna Maglaw, Kenda Nicholas, my brother Alexander from the Granby area, Dorothy Regis, Al Charles, Ramona St. Rose. We also have Claudette Dura, Adelaide Paul. There's someone here, brother Dory Drago, you're there as well. Shara Tiana Georges, good evening to you. Manuel in Pierre, Mary, Lorio, good evening. Teresa, Susanna Rule, Niska Alfred, Chiquito Thomas, Cyrus Raphael, Vern Detta, good evening to you. Brother Bernard Aline, Cecilia Bedminister, Claraline Warrington, you're also there as well. Alvin, can you?
Yeah, we got Deborah Charles Mark, Joe Benjamin. We've got, let's see again who we got. Ferdinand Lawrence, Louis Francis. So we've got quite a few folks. And interesting, as going to been back to what Brother Verse said, you have some of those persons from Brooklyn, New York, Los Angeles, South Carolina, North Carolina, Southern California, Los Angeles, Southern California, sorry, North Carolina, Brooklyn, New York, London. So you see the widespread that folks are tuned in, taking the time off to contribute and to engage in that conversation.
Yeah, indeed. A comment of note here. It is from, let me see if I get that name here. Vern Detta is asking that all important question. Is this my favorite Gaston Basha? And she's
yes, that is correct. She knows who the person is.
All right. So right there, you guys will sort it out on the program. All right. But yes. All right. Again, folks, thank you very, very much indeed. Brother Bird, we brought you on here this evening in terms of you. We wanted you to speak to some issues, local issues in Antigua and Barbuda, how it is affecting you guys, both positive and negative over there. Yes. And as well, when you tell us, we will, tell you as well what is happening in Dominica as well, compare and contrast, juxtapose, as it were, the situation. So I know there are many things that you have to say to us this evening, limited time. So let us get straight to it. Where and how do you want to start, Brother Bird?
I would like to start with the CIP program. We started that when you were on my podcast. Well, for the last 3 weeks, I think we've been at it nearly for a month.
Yes.
Right. And it is a situation where we heard in the last 2 to 3 weeks that they said that there's amalgamation, that 4 out of the 5 countries in the Caribbean who sell passports, for lack of a better word, it is what it is. There's Dominica, Antigua, St. Kitts, and I think it's Grenada. It's just 4 of those countries. And then St. Lucia said they didn't want to join the amalgamation. What I look at it as, it's a form of the 4 Musketeers, all for one and one for all. It's a situation where the world has really come about and saying that these passports are being sold And they've started in Antigua. There's the passports used to be selling when the CIP program, as we call it in Antigua, was selling for $2,500. But after a period of time, it's a race to the bottom, and they're selling them at $100,000 today. 250,000, I mean, in the beginning, but now it's 100,000 US dollars.
Yes.
That it has come down to. So they formed this amalgamation, which is something like OPEC, where they're saying basically, no, we are going to regulate the price for the passports, and we're not going to reduce it and compete with one another to get these clientele. The situation is that you have a program where they are dealing with the due diligence to find out who these people are, and before they get the passport, they have to find out what type of people they're giving the passport to. There have been so many leaks, so many breaches, so many situations, as you guys would actually know, because you came upon one of our CIP recipients in the form of Mr. Choksey. And that was a matter where what we heard was that Mr. Choksey, they had done their due diligence on Mr. Choksey. But in fact, the due diligence seems to have been along the lines of something like this. They sent queries about Mr. Choksey's criminal record, or if he had a criminal record, to parts of India, where it's not the federal government. So some outlying state was asked. They said, fine, he's good, go ahead. But those who were responsible for doing the due diligence never asked, for lack of a better word, the federal government, central government of India, who had a problem with Mr. Choksey. And had they asked that of Mr. Choksey, they would have found out that he was a wanted man by the Indian government. So whether it was a mistake, whether it was negligence, or whether it was design, some outlying state or border or province or whatever we call them, parishes, said, yes, Mr. Choksey is clear. You know, the local people in that area said, Mr. Choksey is fine. Don't have no problem with him. He got that, and he got an Antigua and Barbuda passport and citizenship. And we know what happened. Or you guys actually know better than me, because it was perpetrated in the state of Dominica.
Yes, indeed.
You know, and from since then, Lofty, I'd like to give a little statement about how the CIP came into effect in Antigua. I came home to Antigua after living abroad for 19, 20 years. In 2002, I was employed by the government of Antigua and Barbuda. I'm a lawyer, so I was employed as a young lawyer to be the Inland Revenue attorney. What we were told, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue in Antigua and Barbuda at the time was Mr. Scouten. Mr. Scouten, when I started to work with them, we realized that the revenues owed to the state of Antigua and Barbuda by the hotels and the restaurants was totaling 90 million EC dollars. That was 2002. The government changed in Antigua and Barbuda in 2004. What the UPP under the leader, Mr. Baldwin Spencer, campaigned on for the 2004 election was that there was enough revenues owed on the books in Antigua and Barbuda. What the problem was, there was not enough collection of these dues, or there was not a system in place to basically enforcement to collect the revenues that were owed to the government. Me, as a young attorney at that point in time, was fully in agreement with what Mr. Baldwin Spencer was saying, because it was true. As a tax lawyer, Inland Revenue had to collect 90 million EC dollars from these establishments. So let's move along now. They got into power. The people were convinced that they had to move the Lester Bird regime. And I was convinced that there was sufficient money for the United Progressive Party to run the country if they had gone about contacting these businesses that owed the debt and setting up some sort of payment plan with them. And as a lawyer, I was the only lawyer at Inland Revenue at the time. And I was of the opinion that they would employ another 4 or 5 lawyers, because $90 million is a lot for one lawyer to go after. There's so many establishments. Anyway, they got into office in 2004 with the assumption, as they were saying during the campaign, that there was enough money on the books that was owed to the state, that if we recovered this money, it would be enough to run the country. 2004. By 2005, the 1st of April, All Fools Day, the 1st of April, 2005, the government told us that they introduced the ABST, Antigua and Barbuda sales tax. It was a tax that there was going to be 15% on any goods that you purchase. Some goods, of course, the big staple products for your food and baby wipes, Pampers, and so on were off the ABST. But it was a all-encompassing tax that rich or poor or whatsoever had to go when they go to the supermarkets and pay it. In another year or two, in addition to saying that all the taxes are on the books and there's sufficient taxes, they introduce or reintroduce an income tax, right? In about another year or two from 2005. Unfortunately, the 10 years of the United Progressive Party, by 2012, the United Progressive Party told the Antigua and Barbuda people that despite creating this tax in the Antigua and Barbuda sales tax of 15% of whatever you purchase, and reintroducing, which we never had until 1977, an income tax, which they introduced about 2017, thereabouts, they had to start a CIP program, Citizen by Investment Program. And that is what I never understood, because I was the lawyer for Inland Revenue. And I'm saying, if there was enough money on the books that were owed, and I will tell you my situation, I was fired not too long after they got into office. I am not certain what took place after, but I do not believe that there was a serious attempt to collect these taxes. All we heard was after introducing ABST, after reintroducing the income tax and moving on to CIB, selling your passports in 2012, that there was not enough money in the economy that we needed to create revenue by selling passports. What I would say, that any government that expects, the United Progressive Party were in there for 10 years, from 2004 to 2014. Any government that tells its citizens, because their response to, well, what happened to all the money y'all raised? What happened to all these taxes y'all put into effect? Oh, well, the world financial markets have slowed down. There's recession here and recession there. What is so strange about that? You're not talking about 1 year of government, you're talking about 10 years, and you did not expect that the world financial markets to have any upheaval, whether it's going up or going down. So you spent from 2004 like if nothing was ever going to change in the world. And that is my argument to them when they say, oh, we had to do this because we didn't have the money, because we had to raise the money because of the world financial situation. That is what they tell us. And I am telling the people of the Caribbean, they have to be mindful of politicians having always raising a scapegoat to why they are not able to spend our finances in a proper manner. Because people always say, always put up some sort of percentage or whatever you make for a rainy day. But we did not spend in Antigua from 2004, probably even before that. I'm not going to just say it's just the United Progressive Party government. We did not spend the money that was coming in, the windfall that we're coming in a responsible manner. And at the time and point when we raised ABST, we reintroduced the income tax, and then moved on to the selling of passports in 2012, we did not spend our revenues responsibly. And that is the danger.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mr. Bird, for that very comprehensive explanation as it were going back and bringing us up to date. I took note, brother, you said that you guys' program started in 2012. Am I correct?
Correct. That is one point in time when the bottom dropped out and we didn't have enough money.
Okay, good.
You see what happened? You have to take into mind for Antigua that we also had R. Allen Stanford funding our economy.
I remember that very well.
And with R. Allen Stanford, the politicians were boasting that Antigua and Barbuda were responsible for 40% of the whole OECS region's output. That 40% of the economy of the OECS was based in Antigua. After 2009, when Mr. Stanford was charged with fraud and all that, a Ponzi scheme, right now, I don't even think Antigua is responsible for even 10 or 12% of the OEC output.
The question that is on my mind now, as we delve a bit deeper.
Yes.
The CIP program got off the ground, as it were, in 2012. What mechanism was put in place then to sort of account for the monies that would have been generated from that program?
I would like the people of Dominica and the region to realize that when the CIP program was put into effect by the UPP in 2012, Mr. Brown, the present Prime Minister, used to brag that he was the one that told Baldwin Spencer and UPP about this program, about selling passports. He used to brag about he doesn't want them to take credit for it. We were the ones that told them that there was a way of selling passports and creating a revenue for Antigua and Barbuda. At this point in time, the program was started where the Baldwin Spencer administration said that they were going to hold the money under the National Development Fund. It was separate from the Treasury, the consolidated fund. The money from the CIP program wasn't going directly to the Treasury. It was a national development program where the money would be put into, and the cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda would be spending that money. So you had a two-tiered system of revenue, where whatever else money besides CIP program was going into the Treasury. CIP funds were separate, and that was going to be spent as like a slush fund for the cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda. Mr. Brown and all the ALP politicians at that time in opposition opposed this National Development Fund and felt that the money should be going into the consolidated fund, which was the Treasury, because that was better accounted for. But 2014, when they came into office, they seem to have forgotten what they said. And it's still the National Development Fund. People had questions over this money in the UPP time, and they even have more questions about what this money has been spent on under the Antigua Labour Party, Gaston Brown administration.
So as we speak, just before Alvin comes in here, as we speak, Mr. Bird, I want to ask you, does the cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda have any oversight over that fund in terms of accounting that you spoke of?
They are supposed to have oversight. There are periods of time where they're supposed to, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly, let us, the public, know what the money was spent on. It has not been properly kept to. They have revealed on at least 2 occasions that I'm aware of what the money has been spent on. I remember seeing that they spent money on a school for the Rastafarian tribe in Creekside area, the Sagaifu Rastafarian community. And they did give some money to a gentleman named Ray John, who was a police officer who is in court now concerning selling, having passports in some sort of fraudulent matter. But even with what they have given us, it has not been satisfactory to explain where all the money has been spent, and even what is spent it on is something that we are like blown away by, but this is not something that it's the National Development Fund. What is wrong with sending Rastafarian children to the ordinary public schools? We don't understand where the need was to create a school. You see what happened in the 2018 election in Antigua. Mr. Brown wanted to solidify taking out, he actually wanted to get all 17 seats. So he did promise the Rastafarian community to get them to go to vote for him, that they would be, what this word is, they use decriminalizing of marijuana. So marijuana is illegal if it is to transport, if it's supposed to sell in bulk rates and so on. But the individual is allowed to grow their 4 plants and to use the product personally. So that is what he used to solidify support from the Rastafarian community. A lot of them were saying, even Sagai, who, from what I understand, was saying, he used older Rasta man, an elder from way back in the 70s when he was a youth, and saying, after all these years of being prosecuted and can't burn my home, my chalice and all that in public, I need to be able to do this. And a lot of these Rasta men felt that since the Labour Party under Gaston Brown had given them this right, that they were going to move forward with a Labour Party administration. I remember at even one point in time, they gave another King Frank I a podium to speak on Rastafarianism and the ability to decriminalize marijuana. And it sold well in the Rastafarian community.
Yeah, so basically that was a carrot or catch as to gathering some votes.
Election gimmick.
Election gimmick, yeah. All right, brother. Thank you very much. So far, so good. We are cooking with gas, as it were. Alvin.
Yeah, we are.
Alvin, yes, I know. Alvin, I know the discussion is right down your alley. The CIP program, brother Bird calls it.
I prefer to call it the colonization by investment program.
All right.
It is all about colonization, because you see, colonization is, even if they see over there in Palestine, it didn't just come in one time. It wasn't like we woke up tomorrow and we were colonized. Drip, 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 drip. And it may not be me and you, Lofty, or me, you, and Alvin, but our generations will be speaking about, my father told me that the local people, the indigenous people were able to do this and do that, but no, it's different 30 years from now. That is where we have to fight today, not for ourselves, but for 30 years from now, when our children and grandchildren will be saying, why are we in this situation?
Yeah, true. Thank you. Alvin, as I said, this conversation is right down your alley. We in Dominica have what we call the CBI program. Your take, Alvin, based on what you have been hearing so far.
Colonization by investment.
Yeah. Well, let me first of all begin. And of course, I say thanks to Brother Veer for his outlining what transpired or what took place in Antigua. But let me first of all begin by saying that in essence, and I think we've said that before on this program, we're not adverse to the CBI program of itself. Bear in mind that government operates on the basis of providing goods and services to their citizens. And the way they do that is by taxation. That's where their revenue comes from, their tax-based income tax, licenses, registry fees, you name it. That is where it comes out. Now, there is what is called foreign direct investment, FDIs. And that is where a country attracts foreign investment. So you might have an individual or a company might see a certain potential in a country and decide to make a direct, what is called a foreign direct investment. So they'll come in and they'll say, hey, I'm going to open a business. I'm going to put $10 million. I'm going to put ZZ, whatever, X, Y, Z. I think what happened back in the 90s, when some of the countries were struggling, Dominica included, with bananas going down, and St. Kitts at the time had their sugar and what have you, felt of the need to find a way to attract that foreign direct investment by way of the CDI program. And it was structured along those lines. St. Kitts was the first country who started off. St. Kitts must have been in the program almost 40 years now, if my memory serves me correct.
Right.
Dominica started somewhere around 93, thereabout, with you under the Freedom Party administration. So Dominica is going like about 31 years thereabout in the program.
Mm-hmm.
When the Freedom Party left office, the UWP came in, they continued the program, and then you had this Labour administration came in and did the program. The problem arises as it relates to the accountability and transparency of the program. That is the crux of the matter. And what these guys have done, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Dominica to more extent, they have used this program as a slush fund to do their corruption, to the extent that nobody knows what comes into the program, nobody knows what goes out. It's like a piggy bank that they have, and the money goes in the piggy bank, and they control the piggy bank.
Correct.
And that is the problem. That is the problem. And as a result, you have all sorts of crooks and bandits being attracted to the program, because what they do now, and I know Brother Veer mentioned it there as selling passport. Even that itself connotes a really bad thing in our mind. And that's where the whole question of colonization and all of that comes in, because it has gotten so bad that we see it as purely as selling a passport, although that's not the intention. As a result of the investment, you get a citizenship. And in order to get citizenship, obviously you need a passport. You get a passport. Yes. But because the program has gotten so ugly, it has been seen merely as cash for sale. I give you a passport, you give me money.
It is reduced to a commodity. It is
commodity, exactly.
Like buying a breadfruit in the market.
Absolutely. So it is no longer seen in the context of foreign direct investment.
Yes.
So that is the crux of the matter. And it has gotten so bad to the extent now where the EU, based on our relationship that these islands had with the European countries and the Shanghai countries, are saying, hey, guys, this thing is becoming a little out of hand, because here you are giving citizenship to crooks and bandits, and these crooks are finding access to our countries. And we are where we are today. I mean, in our case, where you may have heard, it is estimated by way of research that the opposition party has done back home, that there's well over $6 billion unaccounted for. That's a lot of money.
I was shocked when Lofty told me that.
At one point, the CBI revenue was somewhere like about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019 or thereabout, one of those years, I can always validate the figures, represented almost 50% of government's revenue.
Wow.
Non-tax revenue, almost 50% of CBI as tax and non-tax revenue. If that is pulled out, you know what dilemma you're in, because I mean, it's like you an individual, you're working and your salary is low, but you happen to be doing a lot of overtime and you're getting that extra money by way of overtime. If that overtime goes away and the employer says, no, we can't give you no longer overtime, and you're just on your basic pay, then you can meet your commitments. Your car notes can be met, your mortgage can be paid, and so basically that's where we are operating as a country. And I think that is a problem. And what is interesting, I think, in all of that, and that's a question which at some point, Lofty, as I said, we may want to bring somebody from St. Vincent, because St. Vincent is the only country within the OECS with us that has not implemented a CBI program. And I'm not saying that they're doing glorious, but they seem to be operating. They're doing things. The last time I checked, St. Vincent debt to GDP ratio was lower than ours, Dominica. So it means a lot of our money goes towards paying our debt. And in terms of our GDP or gross domestic product, our debt to GDP is high. We were almost like 100% debt to GDP ratio, the highest among the OECS. So it would be interesting to find out, how is it that St. Vincent can operate without a CBI and make do, and we, on the other hand, is so dependent on the CBI to the extent where we have no transparency, no accountability, and I think that is the issue. Now, you mentioned the recent meetings that they had and the pact and all of that. I'm not sure what's going to come out of that, to be honest with you. I mean, because at the end of the day, the damage has already been done. The horse is out of the stable. There's a lot of damage. Currently, as we speak, Dominicans no longer have easy and free access to Europe. So even if you, let's say, for example, a Dominican had an emergency and they were flying to, say, a country outside of Europe, but they have to do transit through Europe, through England, they need a visa. Yeah. So they cannot enter. Okay? You need a visa to Canada now because they're saying, hey, they're clamping down, your characters are not good. As I understand it, correct me, Lofty, if I'm wrong, there's a visa needed to go to Guadeloupe and Martinique. So think about the poor hucksters who normally would traverse from Dominica to Guadeloupe and do their little business. They need a visa, the French, because France is part of the EU. You need a visa. So that is a kind of situation that we have found ourselves in as a citizen. And if you ask me, it's a burning issue. It's an issue that's going to require the attention of every citizen. But at the end of the day, you know what, Via? We have to, as a people, change course. And how we do that? Get them out of office, because election has consequences.
That is the truth.
And that is why we bring that information so we can say, hey, this is where you are. This is what you're facing now. How do you change that? The way to change that is to change the guards. And bring in people that have the best interests of the citizens at hand, that are ready there to serve people and not to enrich themselves and to continue this corruption. That's as much I would say for now on that particular matter.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alvin. It is 10 to 7 for those of you who are there with us. It's 10 to 7. We're going to take that all-important break at 7 o'clock, the top of the hour. For those of you just tuned in, though, we are talking to Mr. Bird from Antigua, Vier Bird III from Antigua, and we are now discussing the whole issue of the citizenship by investment programs in Dominica and in Antigua. Mr. Bird, would you mind to continue on where you were in terms of, you know, some other stuff as it relates to your program over there?
There's a lot of stuff that history of Antigua and Barbuda that Dominicans may not be aware of. And there's a lot of history that Antiguans are not aware of. There was an uprising in Kenya in the 1950s, the Mau uprising. And what happened in this uprising, the Kikuyu tribe and some Luo tribe members went up against the colonial powers, which were the British. At this point in time, they had a state of emergency that was announced. And at the end of the state of emergency, in 1957, I believe they hung the leader, the General Didan Kimani of the Mau. That is when they said that the state of emergency was lifted. Are you there, guys? I'm not seeing anybody at this point in time. Hello? I don't know if we have a technical difficulty. Is everybody there? I'm not seeing any feed. But let me go on to say, yes, there was a state of emergency. It ended in 1957.
Yeah, we had a little glitch. Sorry about it, yes, but we're back on.
No problem. No problem. I don't know if you heard me. Yes, there was a state of emergency in Kenya. Kenya is in the eastern part of Africa, and there was an uprising by the Mau Mau tribe. The Mau Mau uprising was led by a group of small guys. Statute-wise, they were not very big people, light-skinned people. They are called the Kikuyu. And some Lu did join them, another tribe. But there was a state of emergency that was brought on by the colonial powers. And the Mau Mau uprising is said to last about 4 to 5 years, from 53 to 57, where they hung the leader, the General Didan Kimani. And at the end of the uprising, there were some 97 whites that were murdered and some 20 to 30 Black Africans that were murdered in this uprising. They failed to achieve their aims, but because of the state of emergency, Kenya was granted its independence. After independence, many of the white colonials that had settled in Kenya decided that they did not want part of a independent Black Kenya. Do you know where they wanted to settle? These people who are doing these atrocities against Black people in Africa? Waladli, Antigua.
Antigua.
In 67, my grandfather, V.C. Bird Sr., purchased the syndicate lands from the sugar syndicate for just under 6 million pounds sterling. And as an independent, well, not an independent, we were going through associated statehood at that point in time, so we governed our own internal affairs. The offer was made by the colonial powers that all the white settlers in Kenya and running away from a Black country, a newly independent country, could come and settle in Antigua. We are even going to say Antigua and Barbuda at this point in time, in Antigua. V.C. Bird rejected that no lands that were purchased on the settlement that he got for his people, none of those lands would be given or sold to any of these white settlers, because what they practiced in Kenya was white supremacy. And a newly associated in statehood independent country would not be going on the line of trying to shake off their colonial masters, but bringing in white settlers from Kenya to be their new colonial masters. This is a country that just is poor and indebted to the Royal Bank of Canada. That is who gave them the loan to purchase the syndicate lands, just under 6 million pounds, which is a hell of a money in those days. And even though cash-strapped, V.C. Bird said no. They could have gone on the path of citizenship by investment, but they did not. They were in a financial bind because the sugar industry had basically collapsed in Antigua, which was the biggest employer. The mono industry for over 200 years was on the verge of collapse. They didn't go on for much longer after that, probably in the early 70s. But now I'm saying whatever financial constraints that Antigua and Barbuda had faced in 2012 cannot be compared to the industry that was in effect, sugar production, that was in effect in Antigua and Barbuda from slavery days when our ancestors were brought over by a boat forcefully to toil in these plantations. And even after 1834, where they were quote-unquote freed or emancipated, and they were under colonialism for another 100 years thereabouts. The leader at the time, facing all the economical hardships, did not choose to go down the path of inviting people to come to the region, to set up their own societal norms, which was going to be getting out of colonialism, but then bringing it back into some shape or form with the white settlers from Kenya. So I am not understanding how the Baldwin Spencer administration, how the Gaston Brown administration can account for the finances of Antigua and Barbuda so bad that we need to start a colonization by investment program. And that is what is happening in Antigua and all these other countries. And as what my brother mentioned, Alvin Thomas, yes, I am not opposed to giving citizenship to individuals who are investing in the government, in the country, I should say. I know it happened under VC Bird Sr. It is something that was done because people left their situations, and a lot of them may have been rich individuals, but they were facing hardships. I know of one situation where one of the peoples that were given citizenship in Antigua was one of the individuals who was close to the Shah of Iran. And because of their revolution in 79, the person fled and ended up in Antigua and Barbuda and stayed there until she died. And she loved Antigua. It was a home away from where she was born. And she loved it she fled until the day she died. She was buried in Antigua and Barbuda, and she made significant contributions to Antigua and Barbuda, where she was granted after a period of time citizenship.
Mr. Bird, if I just interject there for 1 minute before we take that break. Someone is asking a question on the feed, which
Perfect.
basically is asking of you whether you guys program, the CIP program you call it, whether it is the largest income earner as it pertains to you guys' economy.
I believe tourism is still the largest earner in Antigua and Barbuda. I believe during the rough periods, let's say the 2-3 years during COVID, that CIP probably was close to rivaling or maybe actually surpassed because there was the ban on cruise ships coming to Antigua and Barbuda. But no, tourism has by far, I believe, far outstripped the CIP program. But the way the country is running now, it's the ease of money is the problem. No, they cannot interfere with the tourist revenue because that goes to consolidation fund. But what the politicians love is the ease of their control of the revenues from the CIP program, which they will not put that program to rest.
Yeah.
All right, Alvin, just bring some wrap-up points before the 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
hour,
I think Via ended on a very good note because, again, as I said earlier, they're using that CBI or CIP, as it's called in Antigua, as a slush fund. I recalled, I'm not sure if it was you or someone from Antigua, the last general election, where you had acolytes of Gaston Brown moving around with envelopes, brown paper bag of money, and just handing out money like we would say in Dominica, Gloco, like water. And the same thing happens in Dominica, where you have folks around the country during election times or what have you, just handing out, I mean, I'm talking serious money. And that's where it comes back now to the question of what we are currently engaging, and we may not have time to get into it today, this question of electoral reform. Because unless we can have some sort of reform as it relates to one area being campaign financing, so that these guys are not able, I mean, this guy can fund a campaign hands down because they have this CBI money, they corrupt, they can give this guy 10 grand, give this other one 5 grand, and just dish money out. So it's much more beyond the program itself, but the areas of corruption that arises, disclosure, and the lack of accountability and transparency of the program. So it's a great point that you have raised. The fact that they have that money access to create that corruption within the system.
This is Caribbean Vibes.
This one entitled Sea, Water, and Sand from our brother Chuck Doss. Very, very apt to the discussion we're having here, our Caribbean countries.
It's dollar, especially since Guyana ends up no foreign exchange, sir, and the Jamaica devalue, she dollar. Well, countries who are more wealthy and they laughing out kiki and making fun at Guyanese and Jamaican. We are seeing the Caribbean, unless there is cooperation, all of them on the same road to destruction. This time the Barbadians, them understand. You can sit back and laugh at Jamaicans, cause without them tourist boats from Regan, sweet Barbados heading for starvation.
All right, folks, now is your time.
From Washington.
Numbers that are floating across your screen now, 245-2396 or 615-947-9470. These are the numbers you can call to get your voice into the discussion. Thank you for your listening. Nonetheless, this one is from Chalk Dust, Sea, Water, and Sand. Those of you may just tuned into the program, we're talking to Brother VC Bird out of Antigua and Barbuda. Let's take one more verse from the Chalk Dust and then we return to the live panel.
Caribbean leader, instead of pulling together, they prefer to friend with Reagan and Thatcher. Dominica suffering bad, their coats can't get to Trinidad, cause Chambers ain't giving license, it is sad. Chambers saying it's big racket, they want to flood Trinidad market with all their cheap inferior goods and won't. But what do we register as the national carrier? No way, sir. Antigua turned down his offer. This time Chambers and Fairburn understand. You both lead each other in.
All right, yes, folks, if you have to call, that is the time that you should call.
Treaties with France and Japan. And with your own people, you can join hands. Mr. Bird and tourists that come St. John. They need beauty for their trap.
As we're having this all-important discussion here, our local issues. Let's take that caller from this line. Caller, yes, good evening to you. You're on to Civic Vibes.
Good evening, Lofty. How you doing, my brother? Everything blessed?
I'm doing pretty well, bro.
Yeah, well, Lofty, I want to say thank you for the work you're doing. Lofty, you know what I disappointed with? Character special on the government. After selling 43,000 passports, it's alleged 43,000 passports and more in U.S. currency. Yet still, that man tell us he was going to use the passport money to build the airport, you know. But we hear this man draining social security by $97 million and more. But not in which country? Antigua, tell me. Can that happen in Antigua? How do you see Dominicans? Do you see us weak for a man to doing so much to our country? And we can stand? Tell us, Antigua. Tell us what you think. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
God bless, my brother. God bless.
And after they drink their whiskey, they treat.
I can hear a lot of passion in this brother's voice, huh?
Government conference is their shop talk.
So Brother Bird, he asked you rather to tell us if something like that would happen in Antigua. Your prime minister make a promise to build you guys airport, which you have already internationally, that is with passport dollars, but now he's all over the place, trying to,
get the financing.
Get finances to build that airport. We are hearing in the tune of what, 13 billion, the 1.3 billion.
Wow.
So asking you to, just shed some light if that thing could even stand the test of time in Antigua.
You see what happened when we got our independence in 1981, right? My grandfather got the loans for the airport, the VC Bird, the first one, from the Canadians. And a lot of Dominicans pass you, if you remember, pass you Antigua and Barbuda, if you remember, there was the Antiguan flag and the Canadian flag that used to be at the airport flying. that was in recognition of what they helped us with. And as I mentioned earlier, the loan to purchase 85% of the lands of Antigua and Barbuda in 1967 was drawn to the Royal Bank of Canada. Papa said he knew that he would have had a harder time if he went to the colonial powers, the British banks, because the British would never have approved. The government would want them to be getting that loan to be even more independent. So he knew that the Royal Bank of Canada or the Canadian banks would be more, well, they were calling themselves at some point. So they would easily give them a chance. And the only reason that that accomplishment was made was because of what the British had set down to get associated statehood. That 2 years prior to associated statehood, you had to balance your finances. You hear what I'm saying? They had to balance their finances. So that is how we benefited, because the Royal Bank said, well, look at our finances. There's no debt. And I say that to say what is happening from what the caller has said. If there's no proper financing, then where are we really going talking about this is a fund to develop the country? One of the first things I believe that, not to say that we have all this money coming in from CBI, but to say, what are we going to do as a people, as a nation, since you're going to be selling our citizenship? What are we going to use that revenue? So it's not to say that the individuals have to toil and that the taxes coming out of other industries or so on, tourism and so on. This is easy money. And if easy money is coming in, what do you expect to see for us doing that? An international airport. That should have been one of the priorities. We in Antigua and Barbuda, who had all these farmlands and we're not even producing enough for food security. I would have liked to see the Prime Minister at some point, whether this is Ball and Spencer or Gaston Brown, saying a percentage of CIP money was going to revitalize the farming sector, especially after 2000 and COVID. None of that has been done. What is that money going for from the National Development Fund in Antigua? We don't know. But it certainly isn't. What we hear, that does not sound like national development. That sounds like you're giving someone, your allies or one of your cronies, funds to be aligned with you.
Yeah, brother, but before we sort of, move away from that subject matter, the CBI program, I know we have at least one more issue to touch. That 200% increase. That
all of that, the taxes for this year for the Antigua and Barbuda, 1 year after the election.
Yes, we'll touch on that in a while. But it would be remiss of me, brother, if I did not shed some light on our situation in Dominica here as well.
Of course.
As it pertains to the accounting or the accountability aspect of the CBI program in Dominica. I took note, and I hope Alvin took note as well, where you said that there's some issue surrounding the accounting of you guys' monies as it pertains to selling of your passports. But at least that fund, that NDF fund that you mentioned, that National Development Fund, it is within borders.
Yes.
And so there are some persons in Antigua who have the responsibility or are charged with the responsibility to account for these monies. Unlike us in Dominica, Mr. Bird.
Yes.
Our monies that are generated from our passports are held outside of our country.
Whoa.
And I want to repeat that. These monies are held outside of Dominica in what the government calls an escrow account. And so the 6-point-something billion with a B dollars that have not been properly accounted for, these monies are not under the purview of any public officer in Dominica in terms of accounting. But it is outside in some slush fund where Alvin rightly said, and you said a while ago, that these ministers, basically, this government basically is using this money as a slush fund.
That is an extreme case of unaccountability.
Very
extreme. At least that money should even been there. That money in Dominica props up what you can say is your finances, the outlook of what you're able to create as an industry. But if it's outside of the money, is that really Dominicans' money?
That is the multi-million dollar question. Mr. Bird, you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer. And so I want to ask you a very direct question now, because it seems as if we in Dominica have not been able to get it. Can a legal challenge be mounted in the courts in our region? I'm regionalize it now, where these monies are supposed to be held in our treasury, or at least within the confines of Dominica, and they are outside somewhere. Can a legal challenge be mounted as to Dominicans now trying to take ownership of these monies? Think about that. We have a call on the line. Caller, yes, good evening to you. Welcome.
Good evening, Brother Lofty and Brother Alvin, and our brother, he says in somewhere in the States, but he's our brother from Antigua.
From Antigua.
Mr. Bird,
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Lofty, you could hear me?
Yes, hearing you
Yes,
clearly.
we're
Well,
hearing you.
just bring up the voice a little bit. Are we hearing you?
Okay, I think, all right. Lofty, I just called to support what the brother just call and talk about. After selling 43,000, it's over 43,000 passports. Our government now is messing with Social Security. But Lofty, what is more amazing is the amount of debt the government had piled on to Dominicans, Lofty. Our debt to GDP is over 100%. After 43,000+ passports, instead our debt go down, our revenue going down, what we're collecting, and our debt is going up. So where are all these monies? What they're spending it on? Roosevelt Terry telling you, look at the houses and look at the hospital, but he cannot bring figures to Dominica and tell Dominicans how many passports they sell, what programs they use the money for, how many that is remaining. Lovely, nothing like that at all. And that international airport business, Lofty, from the get-go, I have always maintained that is a fraudulent program, a scheme. Because you cannot build an airport. You don't have no plans, no EIA, no kind of drawing, and say it's going to cost $1.3 billion. How you get to that number? And another thing again, he's saying that he's going to give Abdullah to raise the money with Dominican passport, and then we still have to pay him back for selling Dominican passport. Lofty, a lot is upside down in Dominica. You know? I don't know how Dominicans surviving whatever about a week or 2 weeks ago. And Lofty, it's terrible, man. I mean, the cost of living is high, man. A pound of fish is, I don't know, man. When you go in the grocery stores, Lofty, and things are hard. Lack of job, lack of opportunity, and these guys have all this money. And instead for them to help develop Dominica, make Dominican life a little bit easier, it's getting rougher and rougher. The only solution we have is to get them out. I agree with you, Alvin. That's the only way. You can't think no other way than to just get this guy out and clean the house, and let's look at where we are and look at what we have and where we're going. Thank you, Lofty, and again, thanks for what you do, my brother. I always consider you my Martin Luther for Dominica. Anyway,
Anyway,
strong,
my brother.
Alvin. Yeah, stay strong.
Thank you.
Keep up the good works, my brother.
Thank you very much, my brother. All right. My brother prescribed, as our brother in America once said, we need to drain the swamp. But the question that I asked you earlier, Brother Bird, what is your response to us in Dominica?
Repeat the question again to me. What repeat the question to me?
We have, as our reality in Dominica, the monies that are generated from the sales of our passports are not kept in Dominica. There's no account in Dominica where these monies are held. There's no accountability, or very little accountability for these monies in terms of our people in Dominica, cabinet ministers, parliament. There's none of that.
Right.
On the contrary, those monies are held outside of the country in what the government called from since 2014 an escrow account. And so it's from outside of the country now that some persons, we are hearing some names who have the responsibility to dig their hand and pull out funds and do whatever it is in terms of spending of those dollars. So I'm asking you as a lawyer, as a legal mind.
Yes.
What can be done? Can a legal challenge be mounted against this government to account for those monies in much better ways than not? Again, let's just take that caller, brother. We'll be right back with you in just a bit. Caller, yes, good evening to you. Civic Vibes.
Yes, good evening, Lofty. How are you doing this evening?
Very well.
All right, sir. I want to call and say thanks for what you do. This is Phil Francis. I listen to every Sunday and Saturday sometimes. I'm traveling to Pennsylvania for the mountains now, so I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we're hearing you.
But I just want to call. All right, I was going to call and talk about what the two callers before me said about what's going on in Dominica and all this stuff. That's international airport and our money. Man, when I listen to this program every Sunday, it gets my blood boiling. I wish I was home to do some stuff, to take part in whatever the protest, whatever the be going on. I plan to come down for the summer. Hopefully there will be activities going on, so I will be able to put my voice and my foot and my work, whatever is taking place back home. I think all of us need to put our strength to Dominica, because Dominica, our country, is in a bad place. Anyway, I was just calling to tell you thank you for what you do and keep up the good work.
All right, my brother, thanks you. Thank you for checking in here, and thank you for your comments all the time, each and every time.
All right, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, yes, Brother Bird, back to you.
Brother, yes, what I would say in a circumstance, without seeing the legislation concerning how this whole CBI program was constructed, right? Just on a prima facie basis, I do believe that you have some sort of recourse to judicial review or oversight of what has transpired under the CBI program. As you stated, there are some irregularities in the amount of monies that have been raised and the accounting for this money. So there is a way to get it before the court so that you can get some sort of accounting from the government or from the public officials of what has happened, how much money was raised, and what has become of this money. So I do believe, without going any further, or I've seen any other documentation as to how your CBI program, that there should be recourse to the courts to judicial review. It is possible to start a legal matter for the citizens of Dominica to hold the public officials accountable for what is Dominicans. It is your money.
Yes, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother. Thank you for your response.
No, I mean, I am no attorney, but just from the little that I know in my own familiarization with the Finance Audit Act of Dominica, the legislation, that there seems to be a clear violation of the act, because it is clear the act provides that any revenues that the government derive as a government needs to go to the consolidated fund.
Right.
And if we start from the premise that the passport, and we've referred to it time and time again, selling of the passport, if we start from the premise that you, and that's why they don't like the term selling passport, to the extent where the speaker in the past is one of the members, I think it was short. But if we start from the premise that the passport, the seal of the passport is revenue to the state, then that revenue ought to go in the consolidated fund. Now, the government might argue, well, they passed some legislation, some CBI legislation, but you cannot, as a government, pass a legislation to undermine another legislation as far as inconsistency. So you can now, if the Finance Audit Act says that this is where the money should go in the consolidated fund, you cannot circumvent that by passing another act to undermine that. So it seems to me that there is room for some sort of judicial legal review of the matter. Because in all intent and purposes, and not only that, the government in their reporting, as far as both from their budget reporting and even in the Director of Audits reporting, clearly states it as non-tax revenue in their document.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a revenue for all intent and purposes. It is
Right.
a non-tax revenue. It's not like income tax. Because like I said earlier, there are two categories of revenue. You have revenues that are direct tax revenue and non-tax revenues, like various fees. So if you're reporting it as such, then it ought to have gone into the consolidated funds, which is required under the Finance and Audit Act of Dominica, that clearly outlines how government should, one, account for monies received by way of revenue, two, account for monies expended out of the consolidated funds, spent for services and blah, blah, blah. And if that is not being done, I think it is worth some sort of review.
I would like to say further also, Lofty, even just starting a claim against the government, and even before you come to a judgment and building up the case management and so on, is a stage where you call disclosure. So we're not even talking, we can talk about judicial review, and that is a one matter, but even if you sue them for another avenue, before it reaches trial, there's a stage of disclosure where you can get the information that you are seeking. But in order to, before you go to trial. So we're not even talking about at the end of the day, you win your case or you lose your case, but you can get the information. Skilled lawyer could be able to move the matter along and get you the information that you are seeking. Maybe not even the judgment, but just for the Dominican people to be aware of what has transpired from the beginning, inception of this program, how much money has been raised and where the money has gone. So it is possible to get this information. Are there enough Dominican lawyers willing to go forward? That is the question.
I'm glad you raised that there, because that is exactly where I was going. That is, you must have read my mind.
But of course,
that is the problem there that we encountered. I don't know if it's the same in Antigua, but I always say on this program, to hear much is given, much is expected.
Yes. And
time again, even on the feed earlier, I saw one of our persons on the feed says, well, what's to the effect? It doesn't seem like information is moving the masses. What's plan B? Time and time again, we want the average citizen to take action. The man on the street, who may not be as knowledgeable and informed. But here we have, Dominica has, I don't know for Antigua, but we have a bunch of attorneys and lawyers in Dominica. And the question remains is that, not just this particular matter, but why is it that so many issues surface that appears to undermine our democracy and our constitution and the law, and the attorneys are so timid to even make a statement, far less to challenge it on behalf of the people of Dominica?
That is a good question, and that is one of the problems.
And that is a problem that I think is facing a lot of the region. And you as an attorney, I mean, recently we had a sitting judge, a sitting high court judge that chastised the judicial system in Dominica and made scathing remarks to the extent he says there is the judicial system is undermined, and there is an undermining of the rule of law in Dominica, where you have people on remand from 2014 to 2024. Now that's 10 years. And what are the lawyers doing? So the question that Lofty just raised, which is a very good question, touches on a number of other areas. Why is it that a group of lawyers will not look at this matter and say, you know what, we may not even go yet to win or lose, But let us look at the laws of the country. And if we're wrong, like we are saying on Civic Vibes, well, tell us we're wrong. Tell us we have looked at the legislation, and based on the legislation, we think that government is within the law to do what they're doing.
They're doing right.
And if you think that they're outside of the law, tell us, well, yes, they have violated the Finance and Audit Act. And that is a problem we have in the region and in Dominica in particular, that people were supposed to stand up and say something and do something, say nothing, and that is where evil is allowed to thrive. When good people stand by, do nothing, say nothing. And that's a challenge we have moving forward, and we'll continue to have to deal with that.
Alvin, what you spoke of, what you said a while ago, that in and out of itself needs a certain level of, I'm saying, leadership to guide that process into action. And it is there, I believe, we are not ready as a people, I include myself in that, to help steer that action so that these lawyers can be so moved to do what they have to do. Because, albeit, Alvin, you are not, well, I am saying now, you are not going to get any lawyer, any group of lawyers to just rise up one of these days and say, you know something, let us look at this legislation these guys have been talking about. No. It has to take a Alvin Thomas, a Loftus Dura, a Joe Blue, a John Crew to say, okay, lawyer A, lawyer B, lawyer C, we are asking you to do some work in that regard, be it pro bono, or we come up with some funds to pay at least that disclosure process that Brother Bud spoke of.
Right.
And ask them to do that work for and on behalf of the people. Unless and until that can be done and not just lip service, then we'll be continue to having those discussions over and over and over again. But folks, it is 7:28. We have to change gear, as it were. Brother Bird has another pressing issue at 7, well, not at 7:30, another pressing issue, 200% in terms of that increase. I know he wants to speak to that, but let us now just see if we can. I know there's much more to say on that in terms of where we are at with the CBI programs. But let us just try to, encapsulate everything and bring everything to a wrap, as it were, really discussion we have been having. Then we veer off.
Yes. To wrap it all up, I would say that the CIP programs, in what they've come to have this conglomerate or this sort of groupings where they're going to set the rates, is a large effort for the region or these islands to get a decent revenue out of the program. But I believe it is like the little bighorn. It's the last hurrah. And hopefully sooner than later, CBI program, CIP, whatever you want to call it, selling of passports will come to an end. As I mentioned, even when you were on my podcast, there's so many countries when they find oil or they find some other mineral or so on, their whole way of doing business or raising money, or the industries, all the other industries in the countries fall apart, and they just become hell-bent on selling oil or having their revenues based on one industry. I believe that these programs have damaged these islands' leaders in being creative, because before CBI programs, the leaders had to be creative and to go out and hustle to try to find work for people and investors. With this simple slush fund coming in easy money, it is damaging the way our leaders go about trying to find money. I grew up in New York City from the age of 11 when I left Antigua. And I would say from my experience as a individual that went to the New York City school system, I went to the Humanities High School on 18th Street in Manhattan. And I actually had a reunion 34 years ago. I graduated from high school. We had a reunion in Austin, and that's one of the reasons I'm up here. I went to school with an individual. And let me tell you how I'm relating this back to the CIP program. I had an individual, and most people who go up in New York, they'll have people in high school and they will tell you, my friend, a very good friend of mine, was selling drugs. Now, what he told me was that, Via,
Brother Bert, let me just tell the person on the line. Caller, just hold your thought. We'll be with you in just a bit.
Yes, I'll wrap it up quickly.
Yeah.
You're sitting at lunchtime in the lunchroom as a high school student, and you say, boy, Via, I don't even know what I do with this money. He wasn't really an intellectual or went to school. He used to lift a lot of weights and so on, but he had a girlfriend that was a Chinese girl, and she was an A student. And he said, Via, I have my friends. They tell me if I want money, just sell these drugs to them and push it. It's nothing off my back. I do it. And I just want to impress this girl. But he said, Via, I don't know what I do with the money otherwise than that. I don't know what the money goes to. You know why? It's such easy money. I didn't work for it. I didn't sweat. I didn't toil. So I spend it just as I make it. I spend it because it was no sweat off of my back.
Easy come, easy goes.
Easy come, easy goes. That is what is happening to these islands and to our leaders. They are not in there to be creative, to hustle, to make a better life for these islands because it's easy money. And when it comes easy money, nobody's going to think hard and fast about spending it. And that is where we have the accountability issue. On every island that sells passport, there's some accountability issue that we're not getting the full details. So I just wanted to relate it from my experience as a West Indian that went to the public school system and saw people who are selling drugs come to me as students where I make money and I don't know what I do with it because it doesn't really matter to them.
All right. Good point. Good point, brother. Caller, yes, thanks for holding the line. Good evening to you.
Yeah, Lofty is me again. I just want to make a quick point. Lofty, our laws itself, to me, Dominica is in a lot of problems. The rule of law, to me, doesn't exist in Dominica. Example, Lofty, I have a serious problem with the executive coming to parliament to pass a budget which will become law. And the figures are not correct, Lofty. And that budget still passes in the house, the eyes have it. Lofty, I'm not that smart, but I'm saying if you come to parliament with an estimate and the opposition is raising question as to the correctness or the correct figures you estimating, and the parliament is not addressing that issue before it comes to law, before they pass it as the budget. I said to myself, Lofty is a fraudulent document because I remember Roosevelt scared it when that issue started come up at the first, when the issue, Lennox Linton was the opposition leader, when he first raised that question of the figures. Roosevelt scared it come out and say, when the numbers are tabulated, the opposition leader, who's Honorable Lennox Linton, will be put to shame and will be a disgrace and all kind of nonsense. But if you come to parliament, your figures have to be right, Lofty, before it come to law. Before the eyes have it, you have to make sure the figures you presenting to Dominica is the correct figures. And I cannot understand how all this illegality, that's how I describe it, is passing into law. And when it's fraudulent, the numbers are wrong. So it shouldn't even come to parliament before you correct it.
All right, caller, thank you very much.
I would like to hear Alvin's views on that. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but Lofty, maybe you could.
Yes, we understand.
Could explain it a little better to me.
Yes, we understand that very well, caller. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we have to move on. Alvin, you will take that suggestion or point rather from the caller in terms of if the, let me just paraphrase what he said. If the house is set on a wrong foundation, then the house itself cannot be solid at all. And so if the numbers that he's saying that are brought before Parliament, they're wrong, there are questions about these numbers, then, how can it become law at the end of the day? Alvin, I didn't want to rebut on that. And then we
I understand. I kind of get a sense what the caller is saying, but at the end of the day, there are various bits of legislation that governs how we should operate as a country. Okay, so there are legislation that speaks to how the finances of the government should be dealt with. Legislation that speaks to the public service, how, Public Service Act. Legislation that speaks to industrialization, various bits of legislation. And over the years, you will have, of course, amendments to some of those legislation. So Social Security Act, and then you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 amendments to the act as the need arises. But at the end of the day, what's important is the rule of law. Governments must be of laws and not of men. That's a tenet in one of my JC's creed. Governments must be of laws and not of men. And you have to have certain legislation to govern the country. So while I understand exactly what the caller is saying, at the end of the day, there are certain basic legal legislation on the books. Currently, for example, we're having this discussion on electoral reform. The laws that relates to the elections is clear. We have an act that deals with elections. That says clearly how the electors list or the registry should be dealt with and what needs to be done, X, Y, Z. And if that is not done by the commissioner who is responsible for doing it, then it's a violation of the act.
All right. So Alvin, in a nutshell, Alvin, what we are saying here is that there are laws that deal with everything.
Yes,
so once something like that reaches Parliament, there's a law that's supposed to kick in and deal with that situation.
And while it's true, some of them may be inadequate because one might argue that they've been on the books for long. There are laws. Let's govern whatever we do by the law.
All right. Alvin, thank you very much indeed. But we are running out of time and we have to give Brother Bird at least 20 minutes. That is the time we have left. The chunk of that time to deal with another burning issue in Antigua and Barbuda. Verbert, take it away in terms of that 200% increase.
Well, what's happened there? I'd just like to give the people of Dominica a little understanding, a little back filler before I start that. The situation in Antigua and Barbuda up to elections, which the last general election was held on the 18th of January 2023. Now, it has always been a concern of how the country's finances were being run. We were told up before COVID 2020 that Antigua and Barbuda, the Chief of Staff, Lionel Hirsch, used to tell us that the Antiguan economy was the fastest growing economy in the Western Hemisphere, from Canada in the north to Chile in the south. And that was even mentioned in on the radios leading up to the budget speech of 2020. And that was held sometime in January before COVID lockdown came. COVID came and all hell broke loose. We then realized that the Prime Minister was talking about panic and riots in the streets because the finances could not be met. But we thought, well, if we're going to have riots in the streets, and what about every other island or every other country in the Western Hemisphere? We're supposed to be doing the best. We're supposed to be the last that will be having these riots because our finances are supposed to be the best in the Western Hemisphere. Anyway, what we have since learned is that this year, 1 year after the elections, the government of Antigua and Barbuda is saying financially they're having a hard time in paying their bills and paying the public sector. This year, they have introduced a contribution increase for Social Security. They've introduced we're in April, earlier part of this year, they also introduced increase in the prices for gas. The ABST, which I mentioned, Antigua and Barbuda sales tax, which was introduced on the 1st of April 2005, which was 15%. They have now increased that by 2%, so it's now 17%. So we have an increase in the ABST by 2%. We have increase in the contributions to Social Security, and we also have a rise in the price for fuel in our vehicles. The government gave the public sector a raise. And it's been going on from since a promise from elections and hasn't been happening since elections time. Then by the end of the year last year, they said, yes, they're going to put on the increase. From what we understand, it was supposed to be 14%. What we did not know or has not been mentioned in the cabinet minutes is that the politicians gave themselves a 14% increase, not from the latter part of last year. It has been backdated till the 1st of January 2023, which we just learned about. So if a minister of government is making $10,000, 14% of that is added on to his salary. What we learned about now, since just Friday gone, is that in addition to that, duty allowance has gone on from 1,000 EC dollars a month to 3,000 EC dollars a month. And that is backdated to the 1st of January 2023. So they are collecting each individual is collecting $24,000 in the last year from January to December, not even including what is coming on for this year. And that is the situation where you have the slowdown in the economy. We were facing in April, the end of our tourist season. Also, we're the only Caribbean territory that actually seized a Russian oligarch's super yacht. And even that, we were told that the money to maintain and to pay the crew and to pay the insurance was coming from the CIP funding. Even that, we are not told how much, in fact, is this costing us. Because what we're aware of is that insurance for these super yachts, supposedly the Alfa Nero in its heyday was worth about 120 to 180 million US dollars. It is now down to about 120 to 180 million US dollars. But we have not been told, does this boat have an insurance on it? Because the slightest hurricane, the slightest thunderstorm, they're moving the boat around to find safe harbors for the boat. But I'm just saying that to let the people of Dominica be aware that Antigua is going through some serious hardships, just as Dominica is going through, and the accountability and the brazenness of giving themselves such large raises, because they gave the public servant who is making $2,000 a month and is getting a 14% raise is completely different from the government minister who is making $10,000 and up. Then you add on the duty, and that is just unbelievable. We haven't heard the fallout as yet. As I said, that breaking news on the duty allowance just came out on Friday. So I suppose this week coming up, we'll hear what they're saying about it. But it's not looking good. Some people are saying, Antigua and Barbados,
so
that the government...
That duty allowance, not tripping your brother, would represent,
yeah, sure,
what type of increase? What kind of increase? The duty allowance, you said?
The duty allowance? The duty allowance is like a 200% increase.
200%, yeah. I just wanted to
200%
reiterate that point, yeah.
For 1,000 to 3,000. I mean, wow. There's no concept of what are you doing to have such an increase in such hard times. It is the end of the tourist season. And we are facing such a hard time in Antigua and Barbuda to pay the public sector. And then you come and say, you raise these taxes, and now you're going to take the lion's share of the taxes for yourselves.
But at least, Brother Bud, I want to tell you straight off the bat that you guys, in terms of your public servants over there, at least you receive something more than 10%, 14%, you said?
Yes.
We in Dominica, or public servants in Dominica, have received 0, 0, 0, nothing for a number of years now.
Yeah.
Even with the reclassification efforts that they put in place, absolutely nothing. And added to that, you have some of these cabinet ministers now. They have gotten what type of resolving? 50%, 30%, what?
30, ranging from 30 to 50%, from what I understand.
Exactly. So here it is. As they say, birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. It's a sad situation, and we will see the fallout in the coming months. I do believe that the majority of Antiguans are aware of the situation. It's unstable, the government in Antigua and Barbuda. As I said, since the election of last year, it is only one seat is keeping the opposition from taking government. Right? I believe that, as I said, we said off here, we were talking beforehand, that there's a convention for the main opposition party. The United Progressive Party is holding their convention to elect new leaders and new officers for the various posts. But I do believe, and I have stressed to them, that you have to have a mentality coming out from that convention that it is a general election mode. You cannot wait 4 years from now, because 4 years from now, the prime minister in our jurisdictions determine the date of the election. And he will be raising, or they'll be raising their slush fund or their war chest to combat the unpopularity that they're facing in Antigua and Barbuda. As I said, it is one seat. 17 seats are contested in Antigua, right? And they have, I think it's what, 9 to 8? 9 ALP, 8 opposition. That is 6 for the United Progressive Party,
And
one
9
for the Barbados People Movement. Trevor Walker is one, and then the independent Asset Michael won his seat also. So that's the 8 to the 9, and
how is this brother doing, by the way, Asset Michael?
He was off island. He just returned on island about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So okay. Yeah, they had parliament, I think last week or so on. He was active, but as I said, it's one seat, and they have to come out the main opposition swinging after this convention, and not wait for Mr. Brown or the ALP to catch themselves or come up with a plan. They have to force a general election as soon as possible. Are they capable of it? I'll probably come back and give you guys my feedback, because after this convention, because there is from what I'm hearing, to tell the people of Dominica, they said that the leader right now, Jamal Pringle, he is having the backing of the old guard, the older members of the party. And he gives them the stability. And a lot of the older guys feel that they built the party. They were there from day one, and they struggled on the 28 years of a Labour Party administration, the one in 2004. So they want to be taken care of. There is Richard Lewis, who is contesting. Both of them are young men, but he's coming from the rural West, which is the constituency where Baldwin Spencer, their former leader and prime minister, came from. He's in that same position. He won that seat down there. And a lot of people are saying he's an educator, and he actually has books in the school system that he authored. And he is more of an intellectual threat to Gaston Brown than Jamal Pringle is. What I do know is a lot of the candidates did, about 4 weeks ago, write a letter supporting Richard Lewis. And then it was like a denial. A lot of them kind of buckled. I guess they got pressure from the party leadership, buckled and said, no, that's not, we didn't want that letter put out. That was it for internal correspondence and so on. But it seems like, from what I understand, a lot of the candidates, people who went forward last year in the elections, whether they won or lost, are behind Richard Lewis. But the party stalwarts are in favor of Jamal Pringle. So we will see how that one turns out.
Yeah. All right. Just before Alvin Thomas comes in and we bring this program to a wrap in just a bit. The reason I ask you about Asset Michael, I came to you guys' country in the last election. When was it?
The last election, January of last year.
Yeah. And I sort of canvassed in the constituencies, and Mr. Asset Michael's constituency, that constituency and that representation there, I really wanted to get hold of him then to have a discussion with him. And so I'm just putting you on the spot now, brother Bird. If you can tap me into some, contact or
Definitely.
with this brother.
We'll talk about that.
We'd really like him to come on that program so I could ask him certain questions. Really, his independent candidacy and how he keeps pulling up that constituency.
Right. I definitely will give you the numbers and so on and get you in contact with him.
Sure. Thanks. I would appreciate that
problem.
very much. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, guys, we have been at it. It's 10 minutes to the hour. Alvin, I see you have been back and forth with somebody on the live feed. You even posed a challenge. And so let's see. Let's see if you can pull up the rabbit of the hat.
Well, I gave an invitation, and I mean, let me say, because he's listening openly now, that he's available next Sunday. Let's make it happen. He's available. Come on, we'll have a civil conversation and deal with the facts. And the invitation is opened. He was once offered an invitation some time ago to challenge me on a couple issues where I was on TDN This Week in Interview with Tony Drago on a Wednesday program. And he was offered that to come on board where two of us can engage. And last minute he chickened out. So the invitation is there. If what I'm saying is wrong, prove me wrong, and I too will prove him wrong. So I don't have a problem with that.
Alvin, one disclaimer that I just want to plug in there. Yes. What's his name?
You don't even need to call the name. He knows himself.
No. Not that person name I'm going to call.
Okay.
This Calypsonian, gosh. Gypsy.
Yeah.
Has a song that says, a line there that says, when elephants fight, the only thing that gets trampled is the grass. And so on that note, I just want to tell whoever you're posting that challenge or to, Civic Vibes is a platform of facts.
Yes.
And so whenever he's prepared to come on, then be very sure that he comes along and pushes across facts.
Absolutely.
Anything less than the facts, opinions and suggestions and innuendos, it will not stand. And so
absolutely.
Truly here, I'm putting that straight off the bat. So we will not be having a fight of words.
Yeah.
Let us have a fight of facts.
Absolutely.
A fight of the facts, and we are good to go.
Absolutely. That's the platform of Civic Vibes. We're going to propagate any particular what one might consider, political views. That's not what it is. We're dealing with the issue. But let me just say though that I listened to Vera, and there's so much parallel to what's happening in Dominica. Just a little over 2 weeks ago, maybe, I believe it was, the PSU had a meeting with its membership, the Dominica Public Service Union. And some of the issues that they wanted to raise had to do with salary increase, which is still a contentious issue for the union. Gratuity payment. You have people who have retired from the public service well over a year and haven't been paid their gratuity. Now, you know how terrible that could be? That you've retired over a year, you haven't gotten your gratuity, which means your pension not being paid and you're on a lesser income. Upward mobility. That's a huge issue in the service. The government politicizes the service and feels that they can bring their own people in there and put everybody on contract. You have what is called an NEP program. And you have people in that program that have been on that program for the last 10 years. So just imagine you're working on a program, quote unquote, which is not tenured. 10 years plus. Can you go to the bank and get a loan, a mortgage to build your house or do anything meaningful? Yes. There's a huge issue now in the service as far as having senior people in there who can really, because at the end of the day, government is here to facilitate and to ensure that the country operates at a level that everybody's benefit. That's government's role. When you contest as a political party at an election, there are two parties going up or three parties or whatever, and you contest. And the party who wins the election now becomes the government for all the people. This question of politics no longer should maintain. You are the government for everyone. So when you have a situation when you build houses and you only give to your supporters, and you employ in the service, and the interviewing officer must ask who you support, what party you support, where your mother support, who your father support, and even to the extent of wanting you to do stuff that you shouldn't be doing. We have a Calypsonian Back Home trilogy. Last year, not this current carnival, but the previous carnival. You have a song this year he made called Nasty Business, and talks about the things that the people must do to get a job. So, and that's the thing, when Calypsonians sing, they sing about the social ills of society, and governments don't like it throughout the region. They're not telling you anything that is foreign.
Alvin, indeed, the time on the clock is running.
Oh my God,
we have like
really,
2 more minutes to bring it to a wrap.
But let me just conclude. Let me just conclude quickly by saying though, just kind of summarizing back to the CBI or the CIP program as we call it. Like I said earlier, the intention was a good intention. It was something that was meant to deal with foreign direct investment in the various countries. One would have hoped that over the last 10, 15 or more years, given the life of the program, when you take St. Kitts on one end that has been in the program much longer, to let's say Antigua or Grenada or St. Lucia, that they would have come together, since they are all part of the OECS, and form a development fund, and to assist in areas, for example, take LIAT. LIAT now is going through a lot of problems. So the question of free movement throughout the region, at least among ourselves, that you have a fund that could help a company like LIAT that deals with transportation. You have the question of food security. You have the question of climate change and hurricane. Not too long ago, Antigua was complaining about water. They have a water.
No, we're still complaining about water.
Exactly. We have a lot of water. Dominica has blessed us with a lot of water. How can we get into an arrangement where use that fund to develop our water resource and use it to the benefit of not just ourselves, but our folks in the region? So there are a number of things that could have been done with that fund. Imagine, as you said, we have 6 billion or thereabout. It's been alleged that's out there. Put that together with Antigua, with Grenada, with St. Kitts, with St. Lucia. We could easily have a fund of at least $1 billion or more, which could go towards this development project. But like you say, these folks have lost their vision. They are not creative. They have no vision. And as a such, all people are suffering. And what we need to do is bring about a change, and change will come.
Yes, I agree.
All right, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother. We are bang on the money, 8 o'clock. Brother Bird, your final thoughts as we must bring this program to a wrap in just a bit. Again, on behalf of the Civic Vibes team and the many folks listening, thank you very much.
Yes, my final thoughts are that the CIP program will be tested in the coming year or two. And I do believe there will be some form of upheaval with other countries worried about who is coming into their countries. We're not selling passports for people to come and stay in our jurisdictions. It's now been warped and twisted so that people could travel to other destinations because we have access through our passports. So it's not really about developing Dominica or St. Lucia or St. Kitts. It's really about these people want access to other countries for whatever reason, and they're piggybacking on our good name and our good standing. And it's been warped out to the reasons why it came into existence, and the reasons why it is existing, we do not know outside of being just a slush fund for corrupt politicians to continue their reign or their dominance over the political landscape. And it needs to come to an end, or it needs to be properly accounted for the people of these jurisdictions to say if they want to continue the program after proper accounting. And that's where I'll end it on this episode.
All right. Brother Bird, thank you very much indeed for spending 2 hours with us here tonight. Very, very informative program, I must say. And safe travels back home, my brother. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much, Lofty. Alvin, it's been a pleasure as usual, and hopefully I'll be back on again. We're giving you all some updates on the
Yes, thanks a lot, my brother. Good chatting with you as usual, as always, and you have a safe flight back, and we'll be in touch. Thanks for the work that you're doing, not just on behalf of the people of Antigua, but of the region.
For the region. Thank you so much, guys. Take good care. Dominica, all the best. Have a good night.
You're intelligent, I think, and you should face issues, but you're behaving like a moron, cussing me for way up on, but your pipe has no water. You pay too much for butter. Take your Stevie and go. The terrible school system is such a bloody problem. Take your Stevie and go. Agriculture's in a state, planning is inadequate. Take your Stevie and go. The northern and southern idol, the two kingpins of bubble. We know, we like it so.
This is Caribbean Vibe.
We like it so. We free.
All right, Dominicans, that is it for us. We gotta go. One more verse from the Sparrow, and that will do it for us for tonight's program. All of you locked at this time, thank you very much for your eyes and ears.
Anything that's wrong, he will put it right.
See you next week, Sunday, same time, same place.
So
Severe Bird the Third, thank you very much for being our guest tonight, honorable guest, I must say. You did a splendid job, my brother, in terms of the information dispensed. Alvin Thomas, you and the Civic Vibes crew, thank you very much indeed.
We and Georgie going to put it.
To all of you on the live feed that take time off your Sunday to make it happen, thank you very much. See you guys next week Sunday. Bye-bye. We love you.
This brown paper they're using. Take your Stevie and go. Public transportation is an abomination. Take your Stevie and go. Well, food, clothes, and rent is proof. Cost of living gone through the roof. Take your Stevie and go. Classified information for personal gain is common. We know, we like it so. We like it so. We're free. Sparrow boy, you need psychiatric aid to be the bourgeois people motorcade. Me afraid to tell you straight to your face. You're back in a jackass in a horse race. Georgie say, all you ain't getting one damn seat. Oh, and I'll come out to mama guy. Bokassa say, how are you going to feel the heat? The penalty to oppose is high. That's political suicide. We can't get house, so we squat living with cockroach and rat. Take your Stevie and go. Your cesspit flowing over, you could catch yellow fever. Take your Stevie and go. Soldier in bulldozer, break down the shark in Hova. Take your Stevie and go. It's plenty sexual favors to be attended worker. We know, we like it so.
This is Caribbean Vibe.